No, it didn't go live. No, we are live now.
Okay, well, never mind. I won't say that joke I was going to make.
Yeah, you can say the joke.
Not say a certain joke.
I'm just
no, I advise you not to say it. In this day and age, you never know what might happen.
There's no joke.
Oh, dear.
Oh, yeah. It's like, and right out the gate, somebody just like randomly get that in their feed, and they're like, wait, what was that? I thought I was here for this. Why did the algorithm serve me up this? All right, let's go around the room a little bit. It's been a crazy week. We'll run the podcast intro just here in a second, but first and foremost, I always kind of like to start with, what are you guys playing right now? Let's start with you, Reality Based.
Well, for me, I'm playing Mech Warriors 5. I recently got Game Pass again, and I started to play a bit of Mech Warrior, and I'm enjoying the game so far. It was either that or play Starfield again, and hopefully I can complete it by the end of the month. Because I always turn that recurring billing thing off. I know what game you're playing, Microsoft. My goodness.
All right, what about you, Scrag?
Right now, doing a Path of Exile 1 hardcore league for DS Lily's channel. Just kind of chilling. There's about 200 people in there, so I've been playing a ton of Path of Exile 2. I think I've got about 400 hours, and I'm just kind of waiting for more stuff to come out.
Yeah, that feels about right. I don't know if I'm a gamer anymore, because I don't even. I was trying to think, like, what was the last thing I actually got to boot up and play that wasn't one of my kids' games, like, you know, as helping them out with Minecraft or whatnot. And I was like, oh my goodness, it's been like a couple of weeks, and the last thing I played was No Rest for the Wicked, and I was like, and it's great, and we're all just waiting for content. We're all just waiting, and they're gonna have a thing in March, and I'm gonna be all thrilled about it. And it's going to be a good freaking time, but I'm just like, I cannot, it's like, I don't know if anybody's at, like, the last 3 months, I have been insanely swamped with like family obligations, and I'm not complaining. Like, it is incredible to watch my oldest play basketball and just see her get her like first goal. And, you know, there's just been so many things, and I'm like, this is so much fun. And I was like, I kind of look up, I'm like, holy crap, like, my content schedule has slowed down so dramatically, like everything. But then that's the way, and what will make the main topic for today's show. But then you go like online on X, and it's like, it is a fire hose of just chaos. That is, my view is, you gotta laugh, otherwise you might just spend your time, you know, crying to yourself. But all right, so Mech Warrior 5. Like, actually, one of the questions I'm going to ask you in the chat, because this is going to be a big conversation about like the ongoing boycotts and, you know, kind of your view, especially with like, have you been keeping up with Gamergate as well?
You know, I hated it when they came up with that term. Smash came up with that term, and I'm like, oh, I got to find out what Guna means now. And it's like,
I don't even know what it means. I know what it represents.
You don't want to know what it means. But yeah, a lot of these statements tend to be ironic. My goodness.
All right. You got some people here for supporting you. You got Toasty. Welcome in, Toasty. Glad you're here.
Lovely lady. Rhoda as well.
Call in audience plants. Give me a minute.
Call in audience plants. I haven't even posted this in Discord. Like, that's like 10 minutes before the show, I had a client call me, and they're like, and I was like, all right, got to make sure I address that. Got the show. And then after this, I got to go take my oldest to an archery tournament. So it's just like, yeah, I honestly am like, okay, I'm going to see if I can bring some energy, because I am tired. I don't know. My fellow dads out there in the universe, do you have any kids, Ryan?
No, it's hard enough looking after myself. Never mind other people. I from time to time, I make sure my father's okay, because he's very old, and we don't want him to go AWOL. Because you think I'm crazy, folks. No, my father's a lot crazier than I am.
Nice. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and run our podcast intro, and we'll do a little bit of introduction, because we got 2 new guests here today. Chris is on vacation. And he should be back next week. He's skiing out in, I don't know if he wants me to say, he's not in the United States right now. So
I think I have a feeling where he is, because you nearly said it. Don't let your dog wave. A guy in Scotland got arrested for that.
Oh, I heard
And
about
it was
him.
this breed of dog too,
It
wasn't
was that exact
Doing something
breed,
like
dude.
this?
Pugs are great, man. I love dogs, but my aunt always had just a collection of pugs, and I always have been kind of more lab and the kind of the bigger dogs, but it is what it is. All right, we're gonna run our intro, and we'll be talking some video games and some politics here. Perfect timing for those of you who like that that combination online. Here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Crystal Core Radio Podcast. My name is Brian, and joining me, we got two guests, first-timers here on the show. Chris is on vacation, and he will be joining us back next week. But there has been just a mountain of information, a mountain of crazy news. We've got DOGE, USAID, Gamergate. All of that has been going on. That discussion is happening so fast and so furious. It's very easy to just lose exactly what is true and what isn't. And so I wanted to get this panel together. Now, no subject to controversy on lines and being clipped. We've got Ryan, aka Reality Based. You might have seen him making the waves back at the end of 2024. But thank you so much for coming on, Ryan. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit of an introduction for those of you who are new to you?
Oh, sure. Well, hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. And it's great to see you all watching today, whether it's live or on replay or knowing Ginger, a whole plethora of timestamps. My name is Ryan Roger Athe. I'm the see, I knew I'd blooper. I'm also known for bloopers. I'm the host and founder, there we go, of Reality Based, where I speak my mind on topics and people I find interesting, most notably in the last year or so, talking about topics of the day and encouraging many more fine folks to become fellow creators. My specialty is not in gaming. It's not even in topics of the day. It's in creator analysis. And that's probably the only reason I have connections with so many fine folks and fellow creators, because it's got nothing to do with any talent or good looks for that matter. But it's great to be here, and fingers crossed we'll have a great show.
I like how you, like me, were just like, well, we're going to make sure that if it's not up here, we got to make sure it's somewhere else,
Indeed.
in this space. But you absolutely are beating me in terms of just sheer amount of hair. Anyway, we also have Scrag. You've been posting lots of stuff, especially as it relates to PoE 2, an early access action RPG, Souls-like, hard, fun, awesome game with lots of drama that has been surrounding it. Scrag, why don't you give everybody a little bit of an introduction for yourself, and then we'll get started.
Hey, everybody. I'm Scrag, hyperbole connoisseur and content creator. Yeah, I don't really have much. I just started making videos about 2 months ago when I lost my job. But yeah, sorry, I was reading chat. I probably shouldn't do that, huh? Yeah, I'm just a chill guy.
Oh,
that's it.
Just a chill guy. Just a chill guy. He's humble. He's modest.
In regards to hair,
yeah,
your guys' lack thereof. Don't feel bad, because while I have a full head of hair, I found a gray whisker on my beard while I was trimming earlier. So,
dude, you don't even want to know what I would pay to go gray. Like, it's like, because that means I would have like hair that could actually like go gray. Like, I don't know why. I've got, my vision is still like 20, like I had 2015. Maybe it's slid into 2020. Like, I've always just, and everybody else in my family's got glasses. So I'm just like literally counting the days until I wake up and be like, oh, everything's blurry now. What gives? This isn't great. All right. As Rhoda said, that they have just came from watching a politics show, so they're very nicely warmed up. This week has been insane. If like, for just in terms of volume of information, I'd like to get y'all's opinion, because I don't know what is real and what isn't about all of the stuff coming out from DOGE, about like USAID and how they've funneled and funded, and it's following the money. And so there's lots of people reporting things. And I honestly, whenever it's just things are just coming at you this fast, it's going to take the truth to really kind of jump out at us, here months down the road after like everything's kind of calmed down. But I honestly have always thought that was a part of this, the personal strategy of kind of the Trump administration. So this is kind of like harking back to 2016, where everything's just coming at you so fast. You don't know what to be upset about or happy about. And thus chaos ensues. And this ends up making, I think, for great content. That's why you see a lot of content creators coming out of the woodworks. Reality, you talked about like you're a content creator, kind of an analyst, and you really like to dive in deep. Did you see any of the clips this week really coming from more left-leaning content creators who are begging for subs and who are concerned that they might be deplatformed? Where have you seen any of that? And what are your thoughts about all that?
I have seen a few, most notably from Vosh, one of the most egregious examples of the bread tuber archetype, a progressive, left-wing, for the most part, content creators who laughed gleefully in the mid to late 2010s when creators such as Stefan Molyneux, Alex Jones, and I think Milo Yiannopoulos as well got deplatformed, not realizing that that would create a void that a lot of prominent pop culture content creators filled in, and now they are stronger than ever, while the deplatforming didn't work for the previous creators. So on one hand, I'm like, yeah, how does it feel having the sword pointed at you? But on the other hand, I know from past experiences, back then as a viewer, now as a creator, that if they were to be deplatformed, then people who were inspired by them would enter the fray and they'd have a new generation to inspire a new generation. So best not to deplatform them. Keep them where they are, and let them keep on going and keep on growing. But since they are driven by a narrow self-interest to succeed, they won't foment a new generation. And once they're gone, no one will replace them. Simple.
Scrag is adjusting their mic. I was going to toss to him. We'll see if he gets that all situated.
I'm good. Sorry.
All right. I'd like to get your take on the deplatforming fears coming from on the left side creators in the space.
Well, I'm going to preface this by saying I haven't really been following the left side of things. I follow just like who I follow.
Yeah.
But I think as long as YouTube is not going to get rid of you, and Twitter is supposed to be free speech, but you also have Blue Sky, which is apparently very left. I don't really think there's going to be a problem unless your fans just decide they don't like you anymore. So I don't know. I mean, fears aside, so for instance, people on the right the last 10 years have had their fears realized, like Alex Jones, as crazy as he is, which I think he does on purpose just to be like a watchable person. He literally was had people at his door trying to knock down the door to get him out of there or whatever for his business. That's a deplatforming for sure, because he said some stupid stuff on the internet. But I don't
really stupid stuff.
I don't think we'll see anything to that degree. I don't foresee Google all of a sudden turning around and going, "Hey, actually, we're conservative now. Sorry, guys, we're gonna ban all these people." I don't think that's gonna happen. I think Amazon definitely has some legal stuff they should probably worry about with some of their streamers, but yeah, for the most part, I think everyone will be fine.
Just as a heads up, your mic is cutting in and out. Your volume is super awesome, and then it's all right, I can still hear you, not as awesome, but
I will get really close. How's that?
Get really close to them, Mike. Let's just hang out. I'm not for deplatforming, because my view has been this entire time and I've been called a Nazi and all kinds of horrible things for having this view. But as somebody who believes in free speech, I have always stated I would rather know somebody's dark and dumbass thoughts than it be this big secret, right? Because I was in darkness festers, things fester and they become bigger or more dangerous personally, rather than it's because it's not like I say the most profound things all the time. I trip up on my words, and it's okay, I learned from that experience. The answer isn't to, hey, we should shut it down. But there's also an interesting, kind of aspect that Scrag brought up, because it's does your audience continue to support you? And that is actually something that I think is actually both a positive and a negative thing that contributes to the state of content creation. But this entire conversation is surrounded by it, because these algorithms continue to promote the most extreme views. We as content creators are incentivized to speak to our audience and tell them what they want to hear, assuming that you make your living off of this. And that creates this kind of snowball effect to where people who are afraid of being deplatformed, whether they're fear mongering or they actually feel like they're, because I don't think YouTube is going to all of a sudden start, cutting, out, and nor would I want them to. But when you start to kind of see that, what they're feeling is that all of a sudden their views aren't as what they used to be. Their revenue is not what it used to be. And if they've made their content around, their career around those kind of things, it can feel like you're doing that, despite the fact that the audience themselves has decided to move on to either greener pastures or find somebody else. Maybe somebody else is going to tell them what they want. So you're incentivized as a creator, in my opinion, whether you understand it or not, to kind of be dishonest to your community, because if you tell them something they don't want to hear, they're not going to show up for it, and you're going to lose out on revenue. And that in and of itself is just like this double-edged sword. I think we see some of that right now going on with the state of, Gamergate 2.0. You have Goonergate, which is kind of on top of that and or parallel to that within different kind of factions of the various different, quote unquote boycotts that are going on. Reality, what's your take on any of this? Do you think there is hope? Do you think that there is, I'm overanalyzing it? Do you see what I see, or is it completely?
No.
Yeah.
No, it always, when you look at a creator's journey, it always starts off with a passion, doing what they enjoy, whether it's speaking their mind or playing games or talking about something that they're passionate about. It's always passion first. Mm-hmm. Then if you resonate with people to such an extent, then that passion, if you want it to, can then turn into a business model, as it were. For the longest time, I was of the view that you should try your best to have a budget of zero. I still am to this day. That's why I haven't really organized. That's why I'm not really a professional. I don't personally advocate for professionalism among creators. That's why my focus is on those just starting up instead of those who are going up to the moon, because it is passion first, then it's profit second. To me, the key is consistency. As long as you are consistent in your approach, then passion and profit is fine. The biggest danger is when your passion leads to profit and then you become inconsistent, and that is the danger. That's the main controversy involved in Goonergate between the Gooners and what I call the Crusaders, especially the religious-minded folk, because the key condemnation of the Crusaders is not their religious principles. It's their lack of consistency in regards to topics. If they were consistent, then their point of view would be admirable. Then we could just agree to disagree and move on. But it's inconsistent based on previous topics, and when those are brought up, the more well-known and prominent Crusaders tend to stay quiet when confronted.
Will you give us kind of an overview from your perspective about the Crusaders and about the Gooners and that entire thing unfolding? Because that really kind of kicked up right towards the end of last year. And it was something that I was at the beginning of the year saying, up here, just to kind of set some context of how I'm coming at it, and then I would like the summary. The first thing is that I remember somebody was like, how can you support, this movement? Don't you know there's this horrible person over here? And I was like, one of the reasons why this movement has been so successful is that we all know that we don't agree on everything, but we all agree on this one thing, and we can kind of get behind that one thing. And some point in time, when that mission has been achieved, then you'll see it kind of go back into these various different encampments. And that's what I kind of look at with the Crusaders and the Gooners in this regard. But would you give us a kind of a summary for those who don't pay as close attention online?
Well, it started off with an innocent question from Pirate Nation. And then one creator who was disillusioned, stopped making videos. Dread Roberts spoke his mind on the topic, didn't like the fact that that First Descendant had a particular lewd look of a character, He was basically venting because he was disillusioned, and that kicked it all off, kicked off a long-standing animosity that had been, bubbling up for years in some cases. And this controversy was a great opportunity for things to kick off. Now, I'm a creator who preaches for unity in between creators, despite our various differences. And I think Saturday Night Hypnosis is a fantastic example of that unity. I mean, I don't have very much in common with a few members of that panel. I won't dress up as a woman for funds. I will not paint myself as a clown, despite looking like this. But we all have our different approaches, but we all want the same thing, to make pop culture great again. And we all value consistency. We all value dedication. And when this topic flared up, you had all sorts of back and forth between the Gooners, who were fine with what they saw and don't want censorship in gaming, and they don't want any kind of politically charged censorship or religiously charged censorship for that matter, while the Crusaders wanted the opposite of that, or at least proposed that, but their record was not consistent. Melanie Mack's record is not consistent. John De La Rosa's record is not consistent. That's why when the Gooners brought up various examples, the Crusaders stayed silent. I mean, it then stopped over the Christmas period. It settled down.
It got quiet down, and I was like, okay, I guess that's done.
But then it blew up again because Melanie Mack wanted to speak her mind on it. And you never know, folks, and I've personally experienced this. Even the most innocuous comments can cause a controversy to not just flare up, but blow up. And you have no idea what's going to happen by the end of it. I mean, when Melanie Mack spoke her mind, Razorfist's reputation went into the toilet. John De La Rosa's reputation in the toilet, and with it, John F. Trent's. And the entire perspective of the Crusaders, most of them Christian, because we don't have many Muslim or Jewish creators out there, probably have ended differently.
They probably exist, but they're just probably not in our feed, I would assume, right? Because I don't speak Arabic, so it's like, sorry. Like, just because like I would say, like, there's probably French and I know there's Spanish, it's like, but it's not something that, like, as somebody who's not bilingual. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, as someone who analyzes fellow creators as well as previous controversies, I never thought I'd be a topic of the day myself, but I only learned, after analyzing the situation while being there, and then with a retrospective. The best way to kill a controversy is to stay silent and not to go through this back and forth on YouTube or on X. But in the case of what's going on with Gamergate, especially with John De La Rosa, he just won't let it go because he is of the mindset that there's no such thing as bad publicity. He's been doing this for 8 years, and he's faced many, many controversies, and he's kept on going and kept on growing and has thrived from that. And the best way to deal with that is to not, go toe to toe. It's to just and then it'll fade away. Did last time, will again.
It's fascinating because, like, I've had some little bit of back and forth with John. We're both Catholic, so it's like, as somebody who's like, yep, I like, this is how I run myself, right? Like, I'm not gonna go like with Stellar Blade, for example. There was a big, hubbub. Finally, hey, we're gonna make attractive looking women. I was like, yeah, that is an attractive woman. I'm not gonna be playing that game. I'm not going out and telling people that they shouldn't play that game. I'm just like, no, not for me. I'm not gonna. I don't even know when I could find time to even try and play that. I don't, the kids are going to be walking in. I don't want to be, anyway, that's just like how I'm going to run my life. Right. Like, that's kind of my personal kind of approach to it. But that also offended John. And so he ended up, like, I think he either blocked me or he muted me, or he got real, like, cause he's like, it's like, no, I don't think that the approach is ever going to be like, show me in history when beating somebody over the head with your religious beliefs really made them convert. Like, they're like, you know what, your passion and tenacity and absolute disrespect, that really makes me want to follow your God. It's just like, I don't see that happening. And being that he was Catholic, like, he ended up he would try to, I think he told me to repent, and he was just rude about it. And so I was like, okay, like, dude, I'm not going to blanket statement an entire view. And this all comes down to the I guess the root of the issue that John and I had online was the I'm losing my train of thought for a second there. I'm going to toss it over to Scrag while I'll see if I can recover my thought. Man, I tell you, it sucks. I need some more caffeine. Go ahead. Yeah, we'll see. Scrag, any thoughts about what's going on here?
With Gamergate specifically?
Yeah.
I don't know. I personally think it's just a little bit silly. It's like, okay, so in the 90s we had Christians telling us, oh, these sexy women in the Japanese video games are brainwashing our youth to be communists or whatever. And then you had
some of that's kind of true. Like you fast forward and you look at, like, I think there's a way there is a connection. It's not like a one-to-one, but there is some aspect where it's like, oh yeah, anime turns out you're Marxist. Like, I don't know how that happened, but I don't know.
Not
man.
necessarily. I think it depends on the anime and the person.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. I'm just saying, like, I've had a lot of run-ins, and there is a very clear pattern that I am able to to catch on. And generally speaking, it's those. Anyway,
I would argue a lot of those people have never watched Ninja Scroll. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, anyway,
see, that'd be so fascinating to be able to like track like their like what was it, what shows, like what of this art ended up generating kind of like your worldview. And who knows? There's other factors for sure, but
it's overt versus covert. You have 60, 70 years of what I like to call covert wokeness. And a society can radically transform. And then you have 10 years of it being overt, and it creates this big backlash. I know exactly what the opposition are going to do after their loss in 2024. They're going to go back to covert wokeness. It's going to be subtle. It's going to be entertainment first, agenda second. Then you'll have creators questioning, is this bad or is it not? Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 as a topic is a great example of that.
Let's talk about that one.
Yeah, dividing creators who are more moderate, the Gooners, with the more radical, the Crusaders. And then the greatest asset of creators is their unity. It's not their talent, although there are many talented creators. I'm not one of them, but I know plenty of them. It is in our unity where we can be the change we want to see. And once we go back to covert wokeness, that unity will be gone. And every victory we've seen over the past, few years, or let's just say decade, the process will be completely undermined in the next 10 to 20 years. That's if the opposition are consistent.
Well, it's going to be, I think, that timeline will come true if the next 4 years is successful. So if the next 4 years, everybody's like, you know what, I'm doing better. There's more peace in the world. Like, this is actually like working really well. Turns out the far left are just continuing to push like these things that, that continue to cost them, like the middle ground of people. Because what I was telling John was like, this is a fight for the middle. I think we can win this fight and also remain classy. Not that I'm calling on all of the content creators on the right to remain classy, but that's just how I'm going to contort myself. And he found that, I believe he found that offensive because I wasn't, in a way on a crusade. Like,
well, I've had
Crusaders is really, really apt.
Well, I've had good talks with John De La Rose in the past. In fact, I was the one who recommended him to the 100th episode of Saturday Night Hypnosis. And I do know that he's been doing this for nearly a decade. He started his creator journey as a result of a cancel culture campaign against him. And that has an effect. Personal circumstances have an effect, combined with his own personal ambition, doing whatever it takes to succeed. And that doesn't always lead to consistency, folks. Now, I can understand that. I don't have to agree with that, but I don't have to alienate myself from him in order to reach that conclusion, which is why I think the best way to deal with any potential controversies and ensure creator unity is to agree to disagree, move on, and douse these fiery back and forths on social media, and there's nothing social about social media, the best way to douse them down is for either one side or the other to be the bigger man, to use the man term for once instead of person, and just cut it off. Just like silence. Sometimes saying nothing is also saying everything, but it's like a choice-based game and there's a silent option. Sometimes the best thing to say is nothing at all.
Now, Rhoda in chat says the problem I have with the Crusader side is the protester effect. By promoting so hard, they are having the opposite effect, pissing off and making them not want to be associated with God. That's what we've seen really coming from the left. There was an article, I think, a couple of weeks ago talking about how like the follow-up to Hogwarts Legacy needs to try to avoid its controversy, and it's like that controversy led it to be the most, like, I think it sold 30 some odd million units. Like I thought I saw a new updated. Yeah, it's an insane amount. Like I would love to sell 1 million units of anything. And it's like, oh, you did that times 30. That's incredible. Yeah. So I was like, I don't think they were going to on the controversy marketing, but the outrage marketing ended up basically highlighting that effect. And the rule has been, in my worldview, is that if the game is good, people are going to want to play it. And if we make a lot of noise about something we don't like, all you're doing is just free marketing, free advertising, because not everybody shares. That's what, not everybody shares these views. So somebody who's like, yeah, I'm not going to play specific games. I don't need the Sony kind of effect with their, like story driven narrative and characters. It's like, that's just not my kind of game. So I'm not actually ever feeling like I've boycotted many games last year, because there were just so many of these games that I was like, I wasn't going to play that anyway, but I'm definitely going to play this. And it's all about marketing and mind share. Like I wouldn't have known about Wukong if it wasn't for the controversy. Like the controversy kicked up, and it turns out they made a great game. And they're still like, the whole team dynamics is truly this weirdly beautiful structure, because you see, because of that, because of the affirmation that people get, the legacy media here in this case, like IGN, they all had to keep hitting this one narrative from a mistranslation, and they couldn't walk it back because their audience capture wouldn't allow for it. It wasn't valuable for them to go and say, you know what, our bad. And so that in and of itself, I think, was just a truly wild thing to see play out, because that is, I think, it was that. And then for me, what got me engaged was when they went after Cabrutus, and then all of the media outlets all omitted one piece of the story, right? They all together omitted this one piece of the story. And that was kind of like this glass shattering moment. And I was like, oh, there's some, whether it's active coordination going on behind the scenes, or there's just algorithmic coordination, because we've seen that actually happen in the real world. I don't know if anybody's following the Real Page drama, where rents were getting like price fixed. Basically, it was all like the algorithm was just getting everybody to the same rent price. And so they ended up, I don't know if that's still in court, but it was just like, yeah, these algorithms that are generating are in a way having this, not intentional, coercion or collusion, but it has this, that collusion effect happen anyway.
Oh, it's definitely a bit of both. I'm well aware that the opposition, that's what I call the establishment, the opposition definitely collude with one another. In fact, the more desperate they get, the more collusionary they become. And I know that creators, especially those who hang together instead of hang separately, also collude with one another. I mean, look at this. Look at this animation, right? Well, it's not an animation. It's a nice digital picture. It was drawn for me by Will of the Fans, who I'm a regular of on his Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays show. And yes, the spear is there for a very deliberate reason. But that is a positive example of collusion, where it's mutually beneficial. We enjoy each other's company. It shocked me recently when I became aware that some fellow creators stream with people they hate in order to get ahead. That was surprising when I found out about that as a result of a professional courtesy. And as someone who despises professionalism in what we do, that was certainly an eye-opening statement. Yep.
Scrag, you want to weigh in on anything?
I think let me pull the chat back up. I was getting to this point. Where is it? Rees. Where to go?
Mhm.
Advocating is for censorship is advocating for censorship. If you don't like it, don't play it. That's pretty much what we've been doing. Like, if you look at the sales for games that come out as like, oh, SBI funded this game. Guess what? Nobody was working on that game. Nobody buys it because everyone's like, no, we don't want that. But when it comes to this kind of situation where it's like different groups of people are trying to tell people what they like, is, oh my gosh, is this better? Hello?
Yes, you are
Is
having
this better?
technical difficulties.
I am. I apologize.
No, it's well, it's not my show, so I can't say that.
Hold on. Let me see if I could fix this.
Whatever you're doing right now sounds great. So it's like,
is this better?
Yeah,
it does. Yeah.
Okay.
it has not cut out yet.
Okay. So in any case, let me rewind a little bit.
There we go.
Eventually, the people who are being preachy, and I say preachy on purpose because it's it's like a double.
I think that's the root of all of this.
Yeah. So like, I personally like the games with the sexy women in them. I'm a single man. I'm allowed to like that stuff. I don't have kids running around. You know what I mean? I'm not like thinking that real women ever will dress like that, even though they do at conventions. But we're not supposed to talk about that, right?
You mean real women as in characters, or real women as in biologically? So
I mean real as in biologically, because characters don't exist and they're not real. So, I don't know. But in any case, I think that the whole situation is silly because it's like we had the woke crowd pushing their stuff into games, which is apparent. There is no denying that.
They started off like really nice, like, hey, just like, hey, oh yeah, like,
hey, we're doing a thing for other people.
Wow.
Right?
Okay,
and
yeah,
cool.
let's okay. I'll do that. Like, just out of politeness.
I'm totally
and then all
cool
of a
with
sudden
that.
it's like you have to comply, and it was like once it became not optional, then I was like, whoa, like and that happened, like it felt like really quick. I don't know. Anyway, Scrag, I cut you off.
But yeah, in any case, the person being annoying about the thing that I like, it becomes the enemy. So, for instance, the people who destroyed Dragon Age over the last several games. Okay. And I mean the last several because the first one was like great. And then the second one was like, okay. And then the third one was like, I'm not really interested. It's just progressively over time in the Western game market been getting worse and worse and worse. And Brian knows this. What was my main complaint with New World? I couldn't make a...
Oh my gosh, I am drawn. I'm so sorry.
Attractive female character.
Oh, attractive. Okay.
Could not do it.
Tell me that.
Not possible. I like attractive female characters in my MMOs because if I'm going to be looking at something for hundreds of hours, that's a common argument. A lot of people say that. I don't want to be looking at a burly
Chris's
dude.
Argument. He likes Chris likes playing as a sexy female character because like if you're going to be just looking at somebody's butt the whole time while you're running around, like that's a butt I like to look at.
Right. In Final Fantasy 14, I probably have close to 20,000 hours, and I've almost always, except for 1.0, played as a female character. It's fine. I don't think there's anything weird or wrong about that. If people like something that you don't like or enjoy, you just don't do the thing. So, like, for example, Brian liked what was the game from Square Enix? You know the one.
I know. I like a lot of Square Enix games.
The one with the girl and the thing, the bracelet, the magic bracelet.
For Smoking.
Forspoken. Yeah, you like that game.
I liked it. It helped me understand my mom a little bit because like one of the things that people were trying to make fun of the dialogue in these clips was like, it's not the most like eloquent. She said, I wish that I could turn off the swearing so I could play it, around my kids. But every 10 seconds she drops an F-bomb.
Yeah.
she was a woman who was dealing with being abandoned. Like that is my mom's story. Like her, her dad. I met her dad, my grandfather, the same day my wife met him, and then he died. It was like,
Right.
well, good luck wherever
Good
you're
knowing,
at.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and so it's like there was some things about her personality that I was like, I enjoy, and I like, like, was it a AAA game? Like in the sense of like what people have come to expect out of the AAAs? Well, especially if you start to think about Boulders Gate 3, no, it's like this was a 20-hour story, and you're either going to like it or not. I thought the DLC also added a bunch to it. I continue to defend it, but I've always stated that I think it's a really excellent $40 game. Like if they launched that as a new IP at $40, there were so many things also going against it besides the story. Like you needed to have like top of the line PC to play it, and it struggled still on the PS5, and it still hasn't come to Xbox. And so there's always like they just made like Square Enix has gone out of their way for like probably the last 5 years to really make themselves less money with some of the choices that they've made, and they've been working to kind of claw that back over the course of time. Before you continue, I do want to answer one question we have in chat for those who are listening to the audio only. Nyla says, do I have any plans to play Kingdom Come Deliverance 2? The first one was a super good RPG. And just right now, I don't have time to play any video game. And I'm wondering when this season of extreme kid events and things like that, I'm hopeful maybe I'll get some game time this summer. Maybe some free time will open up this spring. But right now, for those of you who are keeping score at home, I have been drinking like a fire hose. And that's why you see so much less content from me. And it's just, I just haven't had that bandwidth to play any video games. So that's my point that I was kind of bringing up earlier. Like, I don't feel like I'm really actively boycotting anything because like I don't have plans to play Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 because I just don't have time to play it. And it might be like I bought a game in January under the stupid thought that I'd actually have time to get around and playing it, and it's still it's installed, and that's it. Like it's 0 minutes. Haven't even fired it up, but we're gonna get there anyway. Scrag, you're talking about you're liking those attractive ladies.
Yeah. So anyway,
in your games.
Point was Brian liked that game, which I already forgot the name of.
We're
not,
smoking.
not disrespecting the game. It's just not that important to me.
Yeah, you're good.
He liked the game. I didn't like the game. That doesn't mean I think Brian is a lesser person because I didn't like the game that he liked.
Your mic is starting to fail again.
Damn it. I
would make a joke, but precedent would advise me against that. Your mic's not working. It's a certain color. La da da.
Okay, fair enough. I have to get real close to it. Anyway, so yeah, I lost my train of thought, but I didn't like I didn't like the game that Brian liked. That doesn't mean I value Brian's opinion any less. I didn't like New World because of a specific thing that I couldn't do. That doesn't mean that nobody should make games like that. It just means maybe I won't play them. Maybe I will. I play other games where you can't do that, and it's fine. It's at the end of the day, if it's a good game, people will play it, regardless of if it matches all the things that they like. For instance,
but what people are picking up on isn't that it's good, like whether the game's good. And this is where I think they run the risk of hyperly promoting it by declaring something as woke before like all the pieces are there. But there is I feel a real well-established pattern that
there's
we
a
tend
smell
to see where
there's a code
it's
smell.
like there's like, hey, just as a I think if instead of like everything, like all of a sudden we're like, I see some content creators declare like this game is going to be horrible because it's woke. It's like, can we just put a yellow card on the field? Like like if we're thinking like sports ball here, like a yellow card or a yellow flag, it's just a warning. It doesn't mean that it's going to be good or bad, but just as that laundry starts to pile up on the field, you end up getting a better sense of it as opposed to like full on just discounting it. And we saw all that kind of build up happen with Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, especially as it relates to the Crusaders and the versus the Gooners. And then we're seeing that kind of play out, continue to real time. Like my thing, and again, like I know John got frustrated about my response, is like I don't nor plan to support certain pieces of content in games but I'm not going to go out of my way to stop anybody from doing it. And so I think it's just a free market decision. He's like, that's not what the Catholic Church teaches. It's like, I know, but if everybody here in this entire universe was Catholic, I think then that makes an interesting argument. Like, what are we doing here? But that's not the case. That, like, anyway, go ahead. What do you guys think?
Well, it's a very interesting. Well,
appreciate you, man.
Oh my goodness, is that better? Oh my God, it was at 8%. What?
No, now you sound like you're peaking.
In all seriousness,
the chaos of a show.
Oh my goodness.
I call them bloopers. I mean, I'm not professional, and so I don't mind it when people make, mistakes on a show. But I always keep an eye on my sound systems. Always on the StreamYard, they take my volume down, and I sound quiet. So I always have to keep an eye on it on another tab. But what I found interesting about the nature of what we do as creators is that it's like juggling live grenades. You mentioned earlier, Ginger, about your schedule. The first great foe of the content creator, in my view, is a schedule. And if you can't handle it, if you can't prioritize the home front, and you can't make videos, make shows, or make videos from certain shows, if you can't handle that, you're certainly not going to handle the other great foes I found over the years. But I have found, in regards to social media, more and more, I think it's less useful to creators. I mean, I only use it to promote videos and to promote shows. Outside of that, I barely say anything. In fact, during the controversy I was involved in, I didn't say anything after the fact for 3 days, and I didn't get condemned once. Everyone around me was getting condemned, but I was not. And all I did 3 days later, put a comment, just standing by what I said, and then the condemnations came, which is when I knew it was a far more cynical effort than I originally thought. The point is, though, there are so many players in the field, and there are also so many agendas within the players within the field, which complicates everything. And that's why more and more I'm of the view that the best way to deal with creator controversies, instead of adding fuel to the fire of the discourse back and forth, you can just see it spiraling. Just douse some water on it. One side condemns you. Just sit on it for a few days. Observe, analyze, maybe take a note or two, and assess who supports that view first, way before even considering a response. And if you slow down the discourse, you slow down the fire. Especially if it's a here today, gone tomorrow type of topic, which usually lasts a week. In all fairness,
less than a week right now. Like that actually brings us kind of like, we got DOGE going in, doing huge amounts of audits. You got like, what is it, hairy balls and big balls? Like the memes in themselves is just like, you gotta laugh. But yes, there's gonna be things that like break. There's gonna be things that catch on fire, and really we'll see how effective any of this is, with the lens of time. But in the short run, we have USAID looking like, through all their constituents and various different connections, are funneling money into a wide range of different ideas. Some of this is true, some of this is not. I've seen arguments made that like this information was always publicly available, which is true. However, you actually go look at how it was made available and the index and the speed, and like nobody was finding this information out. This information is now being disseminated with the public, and it seems like for the most part the public is on board with what is happening and is mad how, at least within the United States, our tax money has been spent through these various NGOs. All of that being said, there is a connection with gaming, especially with Gamergate, especially with the original 1.0 Gamergate, with money kind of being funneled into these different actors. And so this has been a chaotic week. I don't know what to believe. Is any of what what I just kind of summarized true? Is there all of it true? Is, like what do you feel when it comes to this week reality?
Often the truth is crazier than fiction, especially over the past 10 years. So many things I never thought would happen has happened. I mean, how long ago was it? Not even a year. 6 months ago, a presidential candidate nearly got done in. No one could have anticipated that or predicted that.
Like
And then
twice.
within, well, yeah, twice, yes. But the first time it was the topic of the day for at least a week. But within 3 months, forgot about it. Wasn't a topic of the day. And if you try to, point it out, especially with the legacy media going after you, you'd get condemned for pointing it out. The point is, though, we haven't entered a period. We're in a period that I call topic overload. It's a way to counter content creation, because what's a creator to do if they're topical? If they've got all these topics to do, because we only have a set amount of time. It's like the 24-hour news cycle on steroids. Just overwhelm content creators with topics, and they don't know what to pick. So they pick nothing. It's that too much choice effect on a menu. You have too many choices, you don't know what to choose, that sort of
Cheesecake
thing.
Factory.
That topic overload combined with what I call covert wokeness, nothing I ever say catches on, though. That topic overload combined with covert wokeness, mix in a bit of, creator on creator squabbles between the moderate gooners and the more radical crusaders. And those three things put together, I think, will ruin content creation and turn the tide back in the establishment's favor, especially if businesses follow the Wizards of the Coast formula. Because Wizards of the Coast is one of the few companies infected with the woke mind virus that hasn't been losing, it hasn't been shrinking, it's actually been growing and developing. So
it's gonna be interesting to see how that plays out. Like, as I look at all this information, we saw like Trooper saying like USAID was pumping in money to kind of push the DEI agenda into these various different companies. What I think is going to be interesting to see, because like I think when it comes down to like what all of this is true versus not, it's going to be interesting to see like who remains financially stable. Yes, we can hear you.
Test these nuts.
Oh, sorry. I thought I was muted. I hit the wrong button. I totally.
That's funny. Just jumping in. I was like, all right.
All right. Hey, guys.
Oh, yeah.
I thought I was muted. My bad.
Episode 197. It's like you would think. Anyway, we're casual conversation here. I think the truth will end up sussing itself out by all of a sudden. If you see, like we talked about, the some of the leftist content creators out there not getting their money, not getting, like worried about being able to make, payments, is like, well, if a big part of this, which we've seen some of that, not just going to DEI initiatives and more, like if that is all true and that funding is actually pulled, and then your business model, which relied on, taxpayer money, isn't solvent, well, then that's just going to naturally, in a way, deplatform people, or they're going to have to figure out a way to actually, generate money, generate a profit, so that they can continue their operations. And I think that's one thing that, like, when all this stuff is coming out, I'm like, well, it's going to sort itself out, especially if the money faucet is literally turned off. And so when it comes to these initiatives, like within gaming, we're already seeing pushback. In fact, I think Google even announced that they're shuttering their DEI department. And I thought that was like an interesting thing. Now, the thing I don't like about this entire thing, because it becomes such, in my mind, a religious conversation, because whatever you believe woke to be, right? Because I saw a couple of people get mad at me this last week for my video, and they're saying woke means you care about people. It's like, no, I can just say I care about people and I'm interested in equal opportunity. Like that is a fact. However, if you go look at the bigger population, it has all these other contexts, and everybody has these different meanings, and the word in and of itself has changed its definition multiple times, to the point where like you talk about it going in the shadows. It is Marxism 100%. As we had Riskett on the podcast, he called it American communism, and he isn't wrong. Like it will, if this movement on the right is successful and all of this kind of gets this big reset, it will drive it back into the shadows. And like you said, covert wokeness, or in what it really is covert Marxism, where it goes and really tries to, reconfigure itself, because people have called it the woke mind virus. It's like it didn't work back, in the whatever it was, the 50s or the 60s, whatever initially came in, it got eventually rejected. And then we've seen it go dormant, go into the universities, eventually move its way into what really kicked all of this off. If you go look at the last 20 years, it was the Occupy Wall Street movement. That was the big moment. And then all of a sudden, right after that, that dispensed as corporations started, producing this ESG, these very, social justice, kind of things, which even at the time, everybody knew it was fake. Like everybody knew that Microsoft as a corporation doesn't give a crap, doesn't care about this, but they're just going to go along with it because it's just, like everybody knows that it's not real. And yet like, it's still this thing that, oh yeah, it's like people are going to fight about this online and that just generates like attention. I think that shift is happening. And this year is going to be truly interesting to see, if that kind of, still plays out over the course of the year, or how quickly that money dries up is going to be really, really important.
Is this, historically speaking, though, this isn't the first time this has happened. I mean, compare 1925 to 2025. Yes, the layout has completely changed on almost every front, but in one level that has stayed absolutely the same. It has been a conflict, whether peaceful or violent, between the moderate middle and two virulent extremes. Both, have different spectrums, some peaceful, some violent, and it's a constant struggle. Because a woke mind virus had a way different name back in the 1920s, and the backlash against it was so great it led to the deaths of 100 million people in the Second World War. If you drive people to radicalism, folks, because it's their only way out, then they'll take it. And that's terrifying, especially with the technology that we have at our disposal. So it's that constant struggle. And I think what the vast majority of creators want to do is to return to the 1990s era, that mindset, the end of history mindset, when the West prevailed, like 90s liberalism, essentially, 90s culture, 90s politics. When America peaked, it was either the 80s or the 90s.
That's how I knew there's been a tectonic shift, is that I had somebody who I would identify as a leftist call liberals right. Like they're on the right, they're alt-right. And I'm like, fascinating. I've never heard that until today. That means
someone alt-right if they're right of far,
if they're liberal. Like, it's like, and I'm like, there are really good liberal principles, right? Like if you think of liberal and freedom of speech, etc., all of that, I think essentially what we saw is that through the liberal movement and that label, that's where you see the hijacking of that mindset and coming into being so verbose, and they dominated, I think, at least 9 years of the online space, to where you just see people like it's in their own self-interest to not be quiet. And I've always made the case, and I got a lot of pushback over the years. That's why people are like, why are you saying this now? And it's like, I've been saying this for 8 years. I don't say it every day and in every video because I don't like that. Like, I don't think that's intellectually honest. Like, I want to talk about this. I don't need to make it about these other things. But when I want to talk about that, I'm gonna. And it's like, you either, obviously you don't see all the content I made, but no, this isn't a new thing. This is what we've seen happen. And, my pushback against it, now I'm not in the minority anymore because we don't have to worry about getting deplatformed. I can continue to say this, and more people are saying it. And so you're seeing it more. And that's where I think we're seeing that massive tectonic shift in the culture. The question is do you think we can keep it up? Because I know that the wokeness will go dormant, will go covert, because that's just what it's going to do. But do you see this as like a new era? Like, how long would you kind of think that this will last?
Oh, definitely 4 years, because in the West, especially, the politics and the pop culture are tied together, much like in the past, when the politics of the day and the pop culture of the day, although it wasn't really called that, were tied in together. And from my own personal perspective, since the end of the Cold War, that's when you first started seeing the term political correctness. Started off around the 1990s. Then it evolved into social justice, then into identity politics. I call that the trinity of the woke mind virus, because, let's face it, the communists lost. So when you lose a game and you don't want to admit defeat, what do? You change the rules. That's exactly what they did. And up until 2016, they prevailed until the inevitable backlash, because it was overt. It wasn't covert. If you push an agenda covertly, you can radically change a society in a relatively short period of time. Look at America at the end of the Second World War and compare it to America in, say, 1995. A 50-year change. So much has changed because it was entertainment first, agenda second. And that's what led to the massive social changes. And that is why when it became agenda first, entertainment not even second, a very distant way behind, that's when there was a backlash. And that's when the other side of the equation prevails. And that's why I personally think, well, history's just going to repeat in a different way, or rhyme in a different way, in that the opposition will adapt, people will resonate with it, and then the tide will turn again, because the tide is never stable. The pendulum always swings. And the last... Yeah, and in instances where it's stuck, the longer it's stuck, the more of an explosion there will be the other end. We saw that with the Second World War, 100 million dead. If we ever see that kind of conflict again, no one's going to live through it. So that's why the pendulum is so stuck, because human beings at the end of the day, when they can't agree for long enough, they start killing each other. Human history is living proof of that. Yeah, unfortunately.
It's weird to me that I see people with the mindset that we're so evolved to the point where, like, no, and it's like the world isn't playing by your rules. In like, just because you and this square block of people around you all agree and can live in harmony, like the world isn't going to play by those rules. And it's so easy to see how we can kind of slip into that very base human nature. And I think the thing that's, when you call it's not really social media, like, you're very right about that, but it's so easy to see how tribal we can become very quickly, and that's where, when somebody cannot criticize their own side, cannot critique their own side for whatever reason, I'm like, that's where you lose me, because that tells me you don't have integrity. That tells me that you're bought in, or you're so bought in that you're a part of it in a cult-like mindset. And that's why I do think there is that woke right. And that's the term that I use that gets obviously a lot of attention, that obviously doesn't win me a lot of points. And it's okay. But it's like, if you're so bought in that you cannot critique or criticize, like, people who are on your own team for various actions, then I don't even want to hear what you have to say on anything, because I just don't trust you at that point. And that's where I think you think 4 years, this can be a bigger movement and can last a lot longer. And we can, I think, and hopefully make the world a better place through it, assuming that, it doesn't quickly devolve into like self-interest and just like, oh, we're going to enrich our team, and we're going to use the tools of the other team, and we're going to get them off the internet. Because if that happened, I think you're 100% right. What you said at the start of the show, like, that's where you end up making a power vacuum. And then that's where you bring in a whole new generation to fill in that vacuum. Scrag, we've been talking back and forth. I want to see how your mic is working.
Is it working better? Does it sound good?
Sounds okay.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I don't know, man. It's tough to say, because, like, me personally, I don't advertise being on either side. I have left views and I have right views, but at this point, it's kind of hard to tell which is which. When it comes to this kind of stuff, it seems like over the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years, everything's gone so far in either direction that it's really hard to say what is what anymore. I try to be just reasonable. And at the end of the day, whoever's being unreasonable or trying to make me change, like, sum it up, just let people enjoy things, right? Like, you don't have to enjoy things that other people enjoy just because it's there. And like with the DEI stuff in games, there are good ways to implement the D and the I, not the E, because I don't really think equity is a fair system for anyone, even though it is technically fair. I think that there's ways you can do that. Baldur's Gate had all the stuff, all the things that you could ever think about putting in there, I think. And it was fine because it was good.
Well, the rule also,
Cyberpunk.
and Chris has brought this up because especially when it came to Dragon Age or the Veilguard, like it's like okay, you can do chest scars or something like that, and the solution is the easiest. It does require more work. Solution isn't just chest scars. You can put scars all over anywhere. It doesn't matter, but it's that it was so specifically.
Well, and don't do it in a
where-
pandering way. That's what people are
yeah.
pissed about. When
I think
you
this is all.
do
That's why
something-
all of this in my mind it has to be understood under religious context. Like where the pushback comes in, both on the right and the left, from the Crusaders to those who are woke, is that are you preaching? Are you telling somebody? Like, are you preaching at somebody, whether it's in the game or on social media? And if you end up having that mindset, I think you end up just making somebody. You're just pushing somebody onto the other team because all they're like, I was with you.
No matter what you do, you're gonna make someone mad. Like period.
Always.
In the story. I'm gonna catch shit for just being here on this program, right? On Discord. But that's okay because like there are ways that are good ways to do the things they're trying to do. But there are also really bad ways when it comes at the expense of something that already was a thing, like for instance, Dragon Age. Then it's bad because it's like I'm not gonna say it's blanket bad, but it's annoying because like let's say for example you're a fan of Cyberpunk. And then they make a video game for Cyberpunk, the genre, and now it has a bunch of stuff in it that is not Cyberpunk or whatever. Now you're like, well, that doesn't count. Even though technically Cyberpunk, everything in there was A-okay. They were missing some things that, probably would have made it a little bit more true to like the novels and such. But dude, they did a good job and nobody complained about being able to do things that were not normal because it was a good game and it fit with the world and it was not pandering and it was done in a way that was not lazy. Like whenever they do this stuff like, oh, you gotta do a barf, it's like, bro, shut the heck up, dude. And I censored myself, sorry. It's like, shut up, dude. Like we all know what this is. This is a fantasy world where you're inserting today into that, and that's not why. Just make a different game. Like they made different games and they do fine. There are games that are like this. I've been saying, and you can look up probably on my Discord history of this one particular server that I'm in. There have been people complaining about me complaining about woke stuff in games for like literally 5 years, 6 years, 7 years maybe. And it's not that I don't like those types of people. It's that it's like they come into stuff that I'm enjoying and then they got to make it all about them. And that's the problem. It's not that I have a problem with what they do with their lives. They're adults. They're adult United States citizens or citizens of the world, whatever. You can do whatever you want to your body. Just don't tell me how I got to react to it. That's the whole thing I've been upset about over the last 5, 6.
Well, that's what pushed like a lot of people, from that point. It's all of a sudden it's like, wait, I'm being dictated to, as opposed to like, yeah, like I don't care what you do with your life, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, cool, but now I'm gonna just get up in your space, and I'm just gonna and it's not like one time. It's to the point where you're like, this is annoying. It's
like with the like 40K. Yeah. There's no female space marines. There's no female custodians. If you read any of the books, there's never been not one. And then for some reason they're like, oh no, there's female custodians. It's like, no, there's fucking not. No, it's not. It's not a thing.
I wish I understood the Warhammer stuff because it's like I have no buy-in.
And then GW is like, no, it's a thing. It's a thing now. We're doing it. And it's like, okay, well at least there's no female space marines. And they're like,
well, the playbook is so predictable because the opposition use the same tactics all the time. You say there's no space marines, female space marines. There's no female custodians. Well, that makes you a sexist. That means we have to cancel you. That means we have to isolate you and condemn you, and you can't go to any functions from Games Workshop. It's just the same old tactics again and again. If you are going to fight a conflict, at least adapt. Because that's what I expect to happen. I expect the opposition to adapt, come to a compromise, which is entertainment first, agenda second. Then the more moderate creators will then compromise to agree with that mindset.
For me, it's not even into that. It's a fantasy world. The
Mhm.
reason the rules are set up the way they are is so that they're consistent and they make sense, and that
Right.
they're
In a
like
world of
different
magic and shape
place.
shifting and as well, like you could just shapeshift and it just like that. There you go. Cool.
To be fair to GW, there is technically a demonic entity that can rewrite the fabric of reality. So there technically could at some point be female Space Marines
Oh.
if that entity is involved. But I don't think they're coming at it from that point of view. I think this whole push is just like an inclusion thing. Which, if you are a fan of 40K, you know that there already is inclusion. The Sisters of Battle are badass. Okay, there are the Sisters of Silence. They hang out with the Custodians. Every other army except for Custodians and Space Marines has female units in it. Every single one. Eldari, Gene Stealer cults,
And
not
are there
orcs.
and
Orcs
are
are
there
technically not orcs.
right? Are there units that are just female?
Yep.
Like you think of the Amazons, like in that I don't
yeah.
know if they.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
it
there you
depends
go.
on the army, right? Like some
Right.
armies have a mix and match, but there's always been like this kind of inclusion. And the only reason, well, a major reason why there were no female Custodians and Space Marines is because of in the lore, the Custodians can only be made from royal blood. So if you start shipping off thousands of babies every year to the Custodians to be essentially sacrificed, and possibly 1 in 1,000 becomes a Custodian, that's cool and all. But now you have like 5,000 less babies that year of royal blood 18 years from now, right? So they're not going to do that. And then for Space Marines, the reason why they don't do it is because it's not possible, because the Space Marines are old, defunct, old age technology that was only made to happen one way. And even then it fails all the time. Like out of 10,000 people, boys that are supposed to become Space Marines, maybe like 100 actually succeed.
Damn.
We need you and Chris just to do a war.
and I'm a hyperbole connoisseur, like I said, so maybe my math is wrong. But the whole point is that these are a brotherhood of badass dudes, and they're just dudes killing stuff, because that's what dudes like to think about. Like, oh, could this big bug alien beat my giant robot thing? Like, that would be cool. Let's see if it would work. It's like a fantasy thing, right? So in the world it makes sense because it's cohesive. But whenever you come in and you start changing it to fit like modern day, so like D&D, you had Spelljammer and like with Dragonlance. What was the other one? What was the one recently that they censored because it was like not? I don't know. Too many things. They keep changing too many things. I used to be into D&D. Used to be in the Magic the Gathering. I'm still kind of into Magic the Gathering, but not so much. They keep doing too many collabs, and they keep telling white people not to play it. So I'm just not going to play it.
And they keep expanding, and they keep making money. I'm telling you, the most dangerous aspect of what we're going to see with the development of the opposition is if more companies adopt the Wizards of the Coast method, or knowing Wizards of the Coast, they'll just amalgamate all the other companies' failures, like they've recently done with BioWare, bringing on Cringe Bush, that particular creature.
The difference, though, is like I don't think Wizards of the Coast has a massive amount of overhead. Whereas if you're making a video game like with the thing with Dragon Age, it's like, oh yeah, like it maybe got close to selling, under 1.5 million, and that number is, obviously like very generous. But beyond like that, it doesn't matter that they sold like what I would love to sell, because their costs were $300+ million. And so that's where I don't think these companies within games can afford to take that risk. I don't think we're going to see a company that in games can really adopt the DEI model. That's where, like with Ubisoft, we're seeing them completely collapse to the point where like my favorite conspiracy theory is that all of this stuff is being pushed by China so that they can pick up these companies super cheap, because they're going to just implode, because it's like, oh yeah, this doesn't work. Let's make them fight over stuff that like nobody was mad about. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, by the way, like we're all going to, like we're going to really, really highlight like our immutable, differences and stuff. And that in and of itself has been truly wild to see. So I think when it's all said and done, like, yeah, Wizards of the Coast is successful, but I think when you have an established IP, that people know, and so you have people who just going to purchase it because that's a part of their hobby, that's their escapism, and for the most part. But their costs, what are the costs, especially in printing miniatures? It's like, okay, you're making money, you're doing fine, your overall cost isn't hundreds of millions of dollars. Gaming, I don't think is sustainable at that because of the amount of time it takes, the amount of money it takes. You could see more independent games kind of pushing that kind of agenda, but we've always had that. Like, my view of this is that there's been games that are Christian-based games. They weren't good games, so nobody played them. But yeah, like that, people should have the ability to make that and put that on the market, and the market will decide its fate. If you make something good that people want, they'll play it. And like with Boulders Gate 3, it's a perfect example of a really great game. And their solution, we're just going to give you, the player, endless amounts of options, and that's, oh my gosh, that's what an RPG is. Like, who would have thought? Like, that's great. They didn't market themselves as DEI. They didn't market themselves as what they like. I didn't get any vibe of that through marketing. And then they also had it in early access and worked with their community for like 5 years or something like that. It was
quite a long time. And,
a while, yeah.
And the Exodus project, which is a BioWare-inspired game that's being made by one of Wizards of the Coast's developers, is going to be a great test case, because I think that game will succeed, despite having the Wizards of the Coast at namesake, because it'll be entertainment first, agenda second. Wizards of the Coast has learned from their experience with Dungeons and Dragons and with Magic the Gathering that if you prioritize entertainment and then slip in the agenda subtly, properly infest a community, because it is an infestation, and then gatekeep the mindset so that all the condemnation comes from the outside in, it's easy to control a narrative if you can make the narrative that all these people condemning our projects are terrorists. Well, they're terrorists because you've isolated everyone who's not infected, or infected rather, into the ecosystem. And they'll repeat that with Exodus. I think it'll be an entertaining game with plenty of choices, plenty of consequences, with a subtle agenda behind the scenes. And then the project after that, which is being set up by Skeleton Key, which is a recent development that Cringe Bush is now head of. That's going to be agenda first and entertainment second, as a sort of, compare and contrast. What's going to work? What's not going to work? And after the second project gets released, then Wizards of the Coast will decide which strategy will work. I think the Exodus one will, and then they'll start infesting another media or medium of entertainment. I said this on Reality Based. How can we deal with a woke company that keeps on going, keeps on growing, spreads its nefarious agenda, but isn't losing money? We don't have a solution to that. We don't have a solution to a company that spreads an agenda as a secondary factor, but still spreads the agenda, but the main priority is that it's entertaining. And you can't beat it without one hell of a compelling narrative and the support and trust of a lot of people. And you can only do that.
That asks almost for the impossible. Like, that's where when Gamergate 2.0 kicked off, I was like, well, okay, yeah, what video game boycott has truly worked? I do think it is a factor in the equation, a big factor in the equation. But I think you also have so many other things going on. First and foremost, my library of games is incredible. Everybody also is, like, I think culturally, I hear a lot of people are working maybe more than one job. People are just trying to make sure that with all this crazy inflation that they can, keep their bills and lights on and things like that. So it's easy to see how video games can become something you drop as opposed to something that you're like actively, like, oh yeah, like I've got extra spending money that I can go and time to go play these games. And so I think we've seen a reduction in people's time. We've seen after lockdown, I think a greater interest in getting out and doing things as opposed to staying at home. And then you also have the fact that like these people are fed up and tired, and they've been complaining about it from one thing to another. Like, it wasn't like something that happened overnight. I think it started with microtransactions being so heavily pushed down everybody's throats. Like, you look at Ubisoft's state, right? It isn't just DEI that's the problem. they don't have any defenders because they absolutely took advantage and tried to financially squeeze every last penny out of them. Same thing with EA. And like, if they were like, you know what, these guys are gamer first, right? Like, if they're like, no, we're not going to monetize over, we're just going to sell you guys a game every year, and it's going to be great. And that was it. I think you'd see a lot more people coming out defending them because they have that kind of reputation. Ubisoft doesn't, EA doesn't. That trickles down into the development studios. So I think this has been a long build up to ultimately where now here we are, 2025. And I think this is probably the most critical year in terms of gaming, because if companies fear that the risk, the cost of adding in propaganda to their game is going to cost them hundreds of millions of dollars, well, it just makes smart business sense not to. And I think that the market will respond to it. But if it is profitable, if people do show up for the propaganda, then they will. But I don't think that has ever worked. I think you're 100% right, Ryan, that it's entertainment first, agenda second. And I think Dragon Age Veilguard specifically forgot that fact. I think that's where you look at agenda first, and then is it an
Why does it
entertaining
even
game?
have to be an agenda? Why can't we just make cool games like we used to?
Unfortunately,
I have no
you know what I
problem
mean?
with that. Like, because everybody's gonna, like, when we write content, like there's still like our experiences and things like that.
Yeah.
So if someone's like, yeah, like I'm gonna make a character like this, I don't care. Like, that's all right. Is that, or if it's like, oh, I'm gonna make the character like this because I want to achieve this goal. I want to lecture people. I want to have them all pull a barf. It's like, okay, well, screw you. Like,
Well,
I was on board.
Well, yeah, the comparison between Veilguard and Inquisition is very interesting, because Veilguard's problems were numerous. Wokeness was the least of them. There was clearly an agenda in the making of Dragon Age Inquisition, but it was a secondary factor. The main priority was to make an entertaining game and to learn the lessons from Dragon Age 2. That's why Inquisition was so massive, folks. And it was, and still is, BioWare's most financially successful game, because it resonated with people. It put entertainment first. It got Dragon Age right back on track. And, well, it was a well-needed win after the Mass Effect 3 controversy. And from my personal perspective, the comparison between Inquisition and Veilguard is living proof of the positives of entertainment first, agenda second, compared to agenda first, entertainment second. It's far harder to argue against a successful project when it puts entertainment first, because I follow the method of highlight the problem, find solutions, be the change you want to see. It's far easier to do that when you're facing an overt problem compared to a covert one.
I think you said it really well. Ryan, where can people find you?
You can find me at Ryan Roger Athe. I don't think anyone's mad enough to have my name. I'm on YouTube. I'm on X, because you've got to call it that now. Calling X Twitter is like calling Russia the Soviet Union. It wears off the longer it's dead. But
I saw something where Elon was like so happy because his fellow billionaire rival Mark Cuban called it X, and he was trying to talk bad about Elon, and he's like, but Elon responded, "You called it X,
Yeah, you called it X though. You called it the right name.
But you called it X."
Yep. But you can find me on YouTube, on X, and on various platforms, Ryan Roger Athe, and well, hopefully you enjoy what I have to offer. Stand by reality, be based in doing so, highlight the problem, find the solutions, and most importantly, be the change you want to see. If any of you are passionate viewers who want to speak your mind or do what you enjoy by becoming a creator, more power to you, and we'd happily have you on Reality Based. I've been encouraging fresh bloods to get into what we do, because that's my specialty.
I agree to that. Scrag, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitch at hold on a moment. Sorry. I can't remember where the underscore is.
You can't find me on Twitch. It gives me a literal twitch. That's how much I despise that platform. So you can't find me there.
The viewers are there, though. You know what I'm saying. Anyway, Twitch, Scrag_. And then on YouTube, if you just type in Scrag POE, you'll find me. I think you'll be able to tell because my some of my thumbnails are let's just say creative. So yeah,
Cool.
that's where you can find me. I don't have
And
anything
then-
else eloquent to say.
Nah, you're good. We'll get you guys hopefully back on. We'll hopefully get Chris. Chris will hopefully have all kinds of wonderful time on his little vacation. And I'm looking forward to talking to you guys more this year about just gaming. I'm honestly, the thing that I'm most excited about is what is the Switch 2 event? What is the No Rest for the Wicked event? Like I think there's going to be plenty of things to be excited about, but thank you all so much for tuning in. Thanks to my guests for hanging out. And I wish you guys all the absolute very best. And until next week, we'll see you then.